Okay, so continuing on that line about the, let's say, slightly slow time for Ethereum, lack of funding for Ethereum's core protocol is an existential crisis. So here to talk about one of the solutions, called the Protocol Guild, please welcome a contributor for the Protocol Guild, Cheeky Gorilla, by night known just as Cheeky, to talk about funding core protocol stewardship.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for that awesome introduction. I don't think I've ever been introduced as a rock star before. That's pretty cool. Thank you to the Danny, the ETHKL team for inviting me. Thank you to the ETHKL community for welcoming me so warmly. I am Cheeky, and I'm here to talk to you about Protocol Guild. But before we talk about Protocol Guild, let's talk about something else, specifically Ethereum. What even is Ethereum? Now, there's a lot of debate right now in the ecosystem, and if I asked 10 of you what Ethereum is, I'm pretty sure I would get at least 5 different responses. Some of you might describe it as an infinite garden or ultrasound money. Others might describe it as a settlement layer. God forbid, one of you might even describe it as Bitcoin plus smart contracts. But you know what? You would all be right. There are so many ways to describe Ethereum because there are so many ways to use it. And to that extent, we can kind of think of Ethereum as a commons, like forests or fisheries. What are commons? They are an area or shared resource that is accessible to and used by the public. Now, unfortunately, like all commons, this resource can be abused. And I'm of course talking about the tragedy of the commons, which is when individuals act in their own self-interest, depleting shared resources to the detriment of everyone else. And so that's why I have an image of Moloch there, who you may know we like to use to represent coordination failures in Ethereum. And Moloch is holding up a tweet by Amin Soleimani, where Amin is calling out the lack of adequate funding for Ethereum's core protocol development. And this is a serious issue. Existing funding mechanisms for Ethereum's core protocol work only provide a fraction of the financial incentives that are otherwise available in the ecosystem. So this puts us pretty much in a sticky situation where we have a small number of relatively underpaid core protocol contributors who are responsible for infrastructure securing billions in value. And that's not great. What it means is it is not economically rational to work on Ethereum's core protocol itself. And to really visualize this issue, we've created this chart which shows you that Ethereum's L1 R&D work is both low risk and accordingly low rewards. But crucially, it also shows us how by just taking on a little bit more career risk, for example, by going to work for a large crypto project like a layer 2 or an exchange, these core protocol contributors could earn significantly higher rewards. And you're probably not surprised to hear that. There is a ton of money in the crypto space. And of course, there's not a lot of money in Ethereum's core protocol development. And given the unbelievable amount of specialized knowledge that Ethereum's core protocol contributors have, they can quite easily command low 7-figure packages almost anywhere in the ecosystem. And of course, they earn nowhere close to that, working on the core protocol itself. So how can we really be surprised when every once in a while, the core devs decide to go on and do something else? But why does this matter? Because Ethereum is still very far from being done. You've seen this chart in a couple presentations today, right? If you're at all familiar with Ethereum's core protocol development roadmap, you know that there are a ton of super exciting upgrades planned. But of course, to be able to execute that development roadmap, it is imperative that Ethereum is able to both onboard and retain its talented core protocol contributors. So, this raises kind of an existential question for Ethereum. How do we rebalance these financial incentives for Ethereum's core protocol work to make it economically rational on a risk-adjusted basis? Well, let's brainstorm. What about altruism? Right? Can we rely on kind individuals to fund Ethereum's core protocol work out of the goodness of their hearts? Well, this is Ethereum, so we do have some examples of that. So here's a tweet from Preston back in 2018, where Preston called out the lack of funding for the Prism client team. Now, fortunately for Preston, some guy replied, YOLO, and sent 1,000 ETH, which was worth around $100,000 at the time. Now, is that something we can rely on? No, it's not sustainable. It also has a risk of capture because, quite frankly, we don't know if these kind individuals actually have ulterior motives. And of course, it's also narrowly targeted. Not all core devs are on Twitter asking for money, and not all core devs have the reach of someone like Preston. So what else can we do? Well, okay, what about making Ethereum's holders pay? And this is kind of a spicy one, and it has been discussed a lot in the past. Here was a proposal to basically carve out a portion of Ethereum's issuance to pay for Ethereum's core protocol work. And, you know, blockchains like Polkadot do this, so why can't Ethereum? Because it's simply not credibly neutral. Ethereum was created to give power back to the people, and that does not include forcing a paycheck for core devs into every single block. At the same time, given Ethereum's governance process, if we ever wanted to undo this change, it would be really hard because you cannot make protocol changes in Ethereum willy-nilly, which is absolutely a feature and not a bug. And lastly, if we were to establish this precedent of diluting ETH holders to pay for this kind of stuff, well then who's to say that another group of individuals wouldn't pop up in the future and say, hey, pay me in the same way? So it's kind of a slippery slope. There's gotta be a better option. Well, what about building social norms? So here we have a very interesting tweet from Danny Ryan back in 2021, where he said, make it a social norm for all projects building on Ethereum to allocate 1.5% of their tokens to the individuals who are building and designing the L1 infrastructure they rely on. Now this is a very interesting idea. It gives exposure, it targets individuals and not teams, so you know that the funding is going towards the actual people who are doing the work that you want to support. It also gives those individuals access to the upside being created in the ecosystem via tokens. It would be a cost borne by the projects themselves and not their users or Ethereum holders. And if this is actually a social norm, meaning projects are doing this, then it would have a low risk of capture and could even be long-term sustainable. But we're missing a piece of the puzzle. How would you distribute that funding? So let's take a step back. What we want to do is we want to build social norms around projects building on Ethereum to donate a portion of their token supply to help fund Ethereum's core protocol work. What we need is a mechanism to distribute that funding to Ethereum's core protocol contributors in a way that's sufficiently fair, remains accurate over time, and crucially, maintains Ethereum's credible neutrality. How do we do this? Maybe you can guess what I'm getting at, because I've just described Protocol Guild. And to really understand how Protocol Guild can be used to rebalance financial incentives for Ethereum's core protocol work, you need to understand its two core components, a membership registry and a funding mechanism. So let's talk about the registry. First and foremost, Protocol Guild is a membership registry of Ethereum's active core protocol contributors. Today, this membership registry includes a list of 181 individuals. These are people from all over the world. You can see all their names in the background there. But you're probably wondering, how do we define core protocol contributor? Well, we're not. Broadly speaking, your work needs to be open source and involve building or maintaining Ethereum's core protocol directly. And so there's three categories of work that could make you eligible for Protocol Guild membership. That includes client development, research and implementation experiments, and also work that supports those first two, like spec work, testing, security, infra, and coordination. Here's some examples of teams who have Protocol Guild members, who have hired Protocol Guild members. You've probably heard of client teams like Geth, Aragon, Nethermind. You may have heard of research groups like the Robust Incentive Group. And you may have heard of coordination teams like Ethereum Cat Herders. But I should clarify, Protocol Guild's membership is centered around individuals, not teams. Meaning, if you are hired by one of these teams to do this work, but you quit, but you keep doing the work, you would still be eligible for Protocol Guild membership. Now, I did also say that it was a list of active core protocol contributors. So let's quantify what I mean by active. To be eligible for membership, you need to have contributed at least half a year continuously, but on average, Protocol Guild members have contributed over 3 years of their lives to Ethereum's core protocol development. The oldest member, well, they've been there basically from the start, 10 years now. As a collective, Protocol Guild members have contributed over 600 years to Ethereum's core protocol work, which is why we can confidently say that Protocol Guild's membership registry is a list of the individuals who are stewarding Ethereum's core protocol. Now, you might be wondering, well, who updates this list? And the membership registry is actually self-curated. And by that I mean it is the existing members who coordinate to add and remove members. And if you think about this, this makes the most sense because for Protocol Guild to have any legitimacy, this list needs to be accurate. And the reality is, most external individuals or entities, they do not have the necessary context or expertise to both identify who these contributors are and also track their contributions over time. On the other hand, Protocol Guild members, due to the very nature of their day-to-day work as core devs, they have all the necessary context, they have all the necessary expertise to curate this list in a way that gives us the highest assurances that it'll be that it'll be accurate both now and in the future. So what is the net result of all this? Well, with this membership registry, we've made the entire set of Ethereum's core protocol contributors directly legible on-chain. And that's what allows us to rebalance incentives, because we've built a funding mechanism around this membership registry. So let's talk a little bit more about how the funding mechanism works. For starters, we've created a single Ethereum address that anyone can use to send tokens directly to everyone in this list. So think about how much complexity we've removed associated with trying to figure out who to donate to if you want to support this work. And of course, since it's on-chain, it's completely transparent. Anyone can see who has donated. Anyone can verify where donations are going. Our donation address is an immutable vesting contract, which trustlessly vests funds over 4 years from the point of donation. Why 4-year vesting? Because this is pretty standard for employee stock options, and of course, creates really strong incentives to retain these contributors over the long term. How is funding distributed? Well, ask anyone who designed a grant program. It's hard to do so in a neutral way. We sidestep that complexity by using the most neutral impact measurement that we know, which is time. So essentially, the longer you've been contributing, the higher your share of donated funds. For all these reasons, we think it's fair to say that Protocol Guild's membership registry and funding mechanism are simple and transparent, creating strong incentives to onboard and retain Ethereum's core protocol contributors over the long term, thus enabling Ethereum's ecosystem to fund its dependencies. And that last point is crucial because it brings us back to this notion of building social norms. Which brings us to the Protocol Guild Pledge. How many people have heard of the Protocol Guild Pledge? Like a few of you. Are there any projects in here that are thinking about taking the Protocol Guild Pledge? Oh, fantastic. Let's talk afterwards. What is the Protocol Guild Pledge? You can probably guess. It's a commitment by projects building on Ethereum to donate 1% of their token supply to the Protocol Guild. But let's take a step back and unpack that. Why are we asking for native tokens? Well, by donating native tokens, you're giving Ethereum's core protocol contributors access to a diversified basket of funds that represents the value being created in the ecosystem. And crucially, it gives them access to the upside of those tokens while staying focused on their core protocol work. Why are we asking for 1%? Why not a dollar amount? Well, because not all project can donate, say, $10 million. But regardless how big or how small you are, any project can donate 1% of their supply. It's also easy to pledge. You can take the pledge before you even have a token. It also abstracts volatility. A $10 million donation will probably be worth less in a bear market. And also, why 1% and not 1.5%, as Danny Ryan suggested? Well, because we did the math, and we figure 1% will be more or less sufficient if we can actually build social norms around this, and projects are actually doing this. Why take the pledge at all? Well, you guys came to this conference, so I assume I don't need to preach to you, but to fund your dependency. By taking the pledge, you are helping to ensure that these talented core protocol contributors stick around to continue maintaining and upgrading the protocol that you depend on. It also contributes to a more resilient Ethereum by providing another diversified funding stream, and it helps scale Ethereum's values. Public goods are good. Ethereum's core protocol development is a foundational public good. So, for the people in the back who are thinking about taking the pledge, how? It's very simple. Just tweet about it, right? So here are the forecaster posts by the first 3 projects that took the pledge. Shout out to ETHKL24, Tyco, and Pondao. We also have a June dashboard where we're tracking all donors, all pledge takers, and we hope to launch an NFT soon to commemorate these donations. So, now you know everything there is need to know about Protocol Guild, you know about the Protocol Guild pledge. You might be wondering, well, is Ethereum's core protocol work economically rational yet? Did Protocol Guild do something? And the answer is, we're getting there. We've been around for 2.5 years. We've received almost 8,000 donations, which total approximately $100 million in value at the time of donation. Unfortunately, that's worth around $65 million today. But I should clarify that the vast majority of that funding came from 2 projects that took the pledge. So again, shout out to ETHKL24 and Tyco. But as you can see in our donor leaderboard, we have received substantial donations from many different projects in the ecosystem, which we are unbelievably grateful for. But you're probably thinking, that's a lot of money. Does Protocol Guild really need more money? And remember, we need to quantify how that funding is being distributed. For starters, there's 181 recipients of this funding today. We are onboarding new members every single quarter. And of course, it's also being vested over 4 years. So what that means is the median Protocol Guild member is expected to receive approximately $65,000 from Protocol Guild over the next 12 months. $65,000 is a lot of money, but it is not enough to replace a full-time salary for these individuals, and it is not enough to stop them from being poached. So, if we want to make sure that the financial incentives associated with Protocol Guild membership are sufficient to retain these core protocol contributors over the long term, and in the worst case, be a funder of last resort, we will need to scale our fundraising by orders of magnitude. So no, Ethereum's core protocol development is still not economically rational. Here's a tweet from a highly respected core dev at the start of the year where he basically announced his departure to go work for a layer 2. Now, in his farewell tweet, he did give a shout out to Protocol Guild, and he said that it almost persuaded him to stay an L1 dev. So clearly, we still have some work to do. But you know what? Everything that we've seen over the last 2.5 years, we've seen buy-in from Ethereum's ecosystem. We've seen buy-in from projects built on Ethereum. And so if we can establish this social norm that projects building on Ethereum take the pledge to donate a portion of their token supply to support Ethereum's core protocol work, well then you know what? We can make this work economically rational on a risk-adjusted basis, and we can slay Moloch in the process. So my ask to you, if you know a project that is planning a token launch, please let them know that you would like them to take the Protocol Guild pledge. That way, together, we can all help secure the future of Ethereum. Thank you very much.
Woo! Thank you, Cheeky, for that very interesting proposition. Funding your dependency. I think that makes a lot of sense, don't you?